So based on your budget, we're going to look and see if you should buy a Coffee Lake PC. Personally, for most people, this may very well be overkill, especially if they're going to be spending tons of money, like over $1,000 just to play games. That's just not going to be necessary, especially if you're not going to buy the screen, you're not going to buy everything that you need. However, for those people that are going to spend somewhere around $1,500, the simple answer is going to be yes. You should probably invest in Coffee Lake, especially in late 2017, if you're going to go all out. And there's a reason for that. I'll try to explain. Basically, if you're going to buy a PC for streaming and gaming, and you're going to buy it for some productivity, the best PC out there right now is a Coffee Lake PC. Yes, Ryzen's out there. Ryzen's a very good computer, especially if you already bought it. But if you have not already gone out and bought a Ryzen 7 PC or a Ryzen 5, there just isn't a point anymore with the Coffee Lake already out. The price is just $50 to $70 difference. So the question really is whether or not you can find a Coffee Lake PC. If you can find it, you should definitely invest in Coffee Lake over Ryzen 7 at the current moment. Maybe when Ryzen 2 comes out, then you should invest in that. However, that seems not like it's not going to even come out until next year. And even if it does, for most people, Coffee Lake will still be a superior buy. And the reason for this is simply because Intel's been well tested already. The Intel motherboards have already been tested for years. The current model is just an upgrade to the last one. It's not really a new board like it is with Ryzen. With Ryzen, you're going to go through a bunch of headaches that most people will probably try to avoid. However, there is one time when Ryzen will be a superior purchase, and that's when you care about value and when you care about having more cores. If you need 8 cores, you will know that. You will know that you need 8 cores, and in that case, you will probably be better off buying the Ryzen 7. However, if you cannot determine whether or not you need more cores, chances are you do not need them. And in fact, even if you probably do, you probably are better off not even buying it, because seeing as you're not even aware already that you need the extra cores, you probably are safer buying the Intel. Intel right now is 6 cores, 12 threads. Most people don't even need that much. Even for the future, it won't be necessary. Even when you compare it, let's say, with Ryzen, the fact that the core speeds are faster on Intel will usually make it superior over the Ryzen PC. And the reason for this is basically because programs will run faster usually, and then Windows itself will operate faster simply because of the core speeds on the Intel model over the Ryzen. Unfortunately, the Ryzen does lack in core speeds, and for this reason, it kind of suffers in some games. However, Ryzen is still a perfect purchase, especially if you're trying to be save money, and if you're trying to just game. Most people will be okay with the Ryzen 5, and that would probably be my recommendation for most people, especially if you're just going to game and do some light streaming on the side and stuff like that. You do not need more than Ryzen 5. But if you're going to buy a computer and you're going to spend over $1,000, and you're going to spend somewhere around the range of almost $1,500, you are better off buying an Intel Coffee Lake PC. And specifically, I'm talking about the Coffee Lake i7 over the Coffee Lake i5 or the i3. The i3 is still a very good purchase, especially if you're going to be just gaming. You might want to consider the i3. However, the i3 is basically comparable to an i5 was for the last few generations, and that's going to make your PC pretty much outdated soon, I would say. So if you're just willing to game for the next year, and maybe even in all the games from last year, then maybe the i3 you should consider if you don't want to consider a Ryzen 5. I would consider a Ryzen 5 still over the Intel Core i5 at the current moment. The i3, I mean. The i5 is a different story. If you're going to go with the Coffee Lake i5 PC, and you're mostly into gaming, and you're also into some slight streaming, you could probably do well with the Coffee Lake i5, seeing as it is a 6 core, 6 threads CPU. That's pretty okay for most people, especially since when you compare it even with a 4 core 8 thread CPU, it may be even superior because of the extra 2 cores. Unfortunately, that's where the main differences lie. I still would highly recommend it for people to buy the Coffee Lake because more cores are becoming much more value over time. Um, and if people, even though Ryzen has 8 cores, there's just the clock speed, the fact that it's this new architecture, and all this stuff is always gonna be a handicap to you over, say, going Intel. I don't always recommend Intel. I was personally going to buy the Ryzen 7 when it came out. However, I was unable to, and then I'm still pretty much using an old, really old computer, so you really don't need to upgrade yet. If you have a pretty perfectly good working computer, I would say even an i4, maybe even an i7 2600K, you probably do not need to upgrade at the moment. You are probably better off waiting till next year when Ice Lake comes out and we'll have new NVIDIA cards available, or whatever AMD wants to release at that time. If they want to release something to go against the NVIDIA GeForce cards, but the 20 series will probably just be far superior to anything that's available now. On top of that, you're gonna have difficulty trying to buy a GPU in late 2017 thanks to mining and all this other stuff that's going on. So you are still better off just maybe even waiting if you want to buy a computer, and if you have a decent one. If you do not, and you're going to purchase a computer because you need it in late 2017, Coffee Lake is the way to go. This CPU will basically be future-proof for you for at least 4 or 5 years, even more, I would say, because I personally I've been using a computer since 2012 and it's still running pretty well. I need to upgrade it because we're talking about, this is a laptop, so we're talking about 2 gigahertz and 2 cores basically, and that runs well, but it does not run games at all. I will have to upgrade that soon, and I was hoping to upgrade it this year, but I have to wait till sometime next year. And even then, after having used all the other computers that I've had the privilege of using over the years, especially at my job, I still recommend, if you have a decent computer, I would say even an i5 from not too long ago, you should probably still wait. You should be fine if you've already upgraded your GPU to even last generation's GPUs, or even if you have a NVIDIA 780 or something still lying around, you should be fine. You can still game on that. You won't be necessarily playing games at high settings, but even just waiting until, say, sometime when Ice Lake comes out, with the new NVIDIA GeForce cards, you will be quite well off. Especially, or if you just even if you buy the i7 6700K, 8700K now, you should be fine. And then you can upgrade to NVIDIA cards in the future, and you will be fine. You don't need to worry so much about the CPU. However, the thing that you have to realize, the reason I tell people to wait, is because I have a feeling that computers are drastically changing way too rapidly at this current moment. With the increase of cores, just computer technology that has even less cores, I would say, at the moment, are kind of obsolete. And they're becoming more obsolete with time. And the fact that Kaby Lake came out, I kind of highly recommend not buying Kaby Lake, simply because once we knew Ryzen was out there, and once we knew Intel was gonna upgrade their cores, which we've already known from several years that Coffee Lake was gonna be a 6-core 12-thread chip, going out and buying a Kaby Lake seemed like risky, basically, because that PC will not last you, I don't think, as long as a Coffee Lake will in the long run, or an Ice Lake. An Ice Lake would definitely, when Ice Lake comes out sometime in 2018, hopefully, there will not be a need to upgrade your PC for, I would say, almost the same amount of time that since the 2700K has been out. It's gonna be very stable. It's gonna be something that you don't need to touch for years. Because I doubt once we have 8 cores and 16 threads, um, I doubt CPU companies are gonna try to push it further than that. I know for the high end market they will. However, for the general public market, the ones the Core i up to the Core i7, they're not going to change the core count up above 8 core 16 threads. It's just I don't think that's gonna happen, and I think you should be pretty well. Like if you buy in the future a nice like CPU, you will be definitely fine. But for now, for this year, if you still have an old PC, I would say from a 2700K onward, you should not need to upgrade at the moment. There's just no need. And if you have a decent GPU, you don't need to upgrade. However, if you do not have any of these things, and you need to buy a computer, and you want to buy one now, especially if you just want to buy it now, it is highly and you're going to spend, let's say you're going to spend $1,500 ish mark around that area. You are definitely doing yourself a favor by buying the Coffee Lake PC over, say, a Ryzen 7 or even a Ryzen 5, if that is your intention. If your intention, again, is to play games with all frame rates that you can have, like at the highest settings or even at 1080p, if you're being a competitive gamer, you are doing yourself a favor by buying the Coffee Lake PC. There's just no denying that. However, if you're just a regular user and you're just looking to save some money, I recommend a Ryzen 5 for the most part, especially if you're buying a computer now just to have fun. And if you're buying a Ryzen 5, I would recommend the Ryzen 5 1600 or I think 1600X, the one that comes with the 6 cores and 12 threads. You're doing yourself a favor by buying that. 4 cores and 8 threads are pretty good. They should last you another 4 years, I would think. But if you want a PC that's going to last you for a long, long time, more cores are necessary. If you are fine with upgrading later on in that time span, you still will be okay. But we're talking about an increase of like $20 to $50, and at that point, it's like $100, like between a Ryzen 5 to the Coffee Lake CPU. If you can find it at MSRP, you are better off getting a Coffee Lake. If you cannot find it at all, which is just gonna happen, like it's gonna be really hard to find apparently for the rest of the year, then that's a little bit different. If you have to spend way more, like $150 to $200 more just to get the Coffee Lake, you probably should not buy that. The Ryzen 7 there's just a minor difference between the Ryzen 7 and the Coffee Lake CPU. The only thing is that for the average user who's like not computer savvy and just wants the computer to like turn on and work fine from the start, you are better off buying the Coffee Lake CPU. You will thank yourself in the future because it'll be easier to use, it'll give you less headaches, and basically you probably will use it for longer. That said, that's basically all I have to say for this. Like, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll definitely talk to you. I can probably tell you whatever you want to know. Like, I can probably answer your questions for PCs. If I have time, I'll do it. This is an always changing market, so what I say now may be useless in the future. But honestly, you guys are probably going to do yourselves a favor if you go with Intel at the moment. However, I cannot say anything bad about AMD. What AMD did with Ryzen is phenomenal. And I really still wish I could have bought that PC because I really wanted to buy it. However, I just didn't have the money and I didn't have a place for it, so I didn't get it. Hopefully, with the mobile market, things will change. I don't know if Coffee Lake is coming out for the mobile market, to be honest, since the only high-end mobile CPU for Coffee Lake that I've seen are usually just the desktop variant. And if it's not the desktop variant, it's all I've heard from Intel is that they've put a high-end PC with Cannon Lake in it. And Cannon Lake, it seems like it's going to be a laptop CPU, and that may be very well just Coffee Lake for high-end laptops. And I still haven't seen any news on Coffee Lake mobile CPUs. I have seen hints about it, but I have not seen it called necessarily Coffee Lake, and I also haven't seen it said by Intel. So there are rumors out there, and there are screenshots of the supposed CPU, but I had just not 100% sure if it's going to be Coffee Lake or if they're going to call it Cannon Lake or what's going on with that. So for laptops, it's a different deal, so I'll make a different video for that. However, for PCs, you definitely want to look at Coffee Lake at the current moment if you're buying a new one. However, you should probably still even go further and just look for an old one and just wait for the upgrades to come, because PCs are in such a monumental moment right now where things are just going to change drastically. And gaming, games are going to use more cores and stuff, and I believe a lot of applications are going to start using more cores. Windows is probably going to start using more cores, and eventually it's going to be an overnight change, I think. And all 4 cores, 8-thread PCs, although still useful, they're going to be more like i3s in the future. You need to consider that. If you want, basically what was high-end today is probably very not high-end tomorrow. And then although this usually was the case, you have to realize for the last 5 or more years, it's actually been more years since basically Intel's released the Core i7, i5, and i3 series. They basically dominate the market. If you bought one, you basically need to upgrade, because there's been only incremental upgrades since then. And so PCs now are going from incremental updates to massive upgrades. Things will change. So like what was high-end then, high-end yesterday, is definitely not going to be high-end tomorrow. Even though what was what was high-end the day before that was high-end still by the time the tomorrow came. And it's just because although PCs in the past used to change basically overnight, nowadays the technology has just gotten way different. Like if there hasn't been any competition, so there hasn't been any upgrades. But now with this competition, with these massive upgrades occurring, it's either Coffee Lake if you're going to spend a lot of money, Ryzen 7 if you need more cores for some reason, and other than that, you should probably just consider, if you're on a super budget, you should consider a Ryzen 5. Anyways, guys, that's all I can say for this. Like, if you have questions, again, leave them in the comments below, or just send me a message. I'll try to get back to you. Have a good day. I'm signing out. Bye.